So cool of you guys to be here. We didn't know if people who were interested in Paradise Spheres were going to be interested in reading a book. Turns out, yeah, not just a book, but this book. Although I do have a couple of disclaimers that I kind of have to go over if you're here because of Paradise Spheres. The first one, this has really nothing to do with me. I wrote the book, but it doesn't have anything to do with like being in a band or touring, or a lot of people, when I tell them that I wrote a book, generally the first thing that they'll say to me is like, they won't even ask, they'll just sort of put it onto me. They'll be like, oh, it's an autobiography, right? You wrote a memoir about your time in your band, right? Not right. I'm a very boring person. I think I would write a really boring memoir. I think I would write the kind of memoir that you would give up on halfway through, because even the situations that are supposed to be dramatic end up completely void of drama. For instance, the most dramatic breakup I ever had was when a girl told me that she thought we should see other people, and I said, okay, why? And she said, I don't know, I just kind of feel like it. And I said, okay. And that was it. That was the whole conversation. Nothing more was said after that. I got fired from a grocery store when I was in high school, which sounds like it would be really good fodder for a memoir. I was stealing chocolate milk. It was a big scandal. It was expired chocolate milk, so I don't know why they would fire me for it. But by the end of the conversation in which I was fired, me and my boss were like hugging. And I was like, man, I really hope your grocery store thing works out. I always felt there was some greater love waiting for me, just around the bend of the orange horizon. I'm learning now that the world is a circle, and what I thought is ahead of me is actually behind, but my eyes are open, and I can see that I'm coming up on it again. Arthur, Timothy, Arthur, a hand-to-desk, pen-shaking light off waves, reflections of light. They've long since forgotten us, but they're just waves, and what were they ever but reflections of light? What were any of us ever but reflections of light? I'm called to a voice I don't remember, in a language I invented and have since forgotten. Light too bright to see its source. Chevy, Greyhound, Zephyr, you, me, them, light from orange sky. I hear there are clouds ahead, and I hear trumpets and angels in your voice calling to me, finding peace in forgotten wars, homes in foreclosed jungles, saints in the slums of missions, sinners in the sanctuaries of Church Street, hope in the forests of Elko, safety in Mecca, chaos in the cold, wet veins of Great Jeffrey Arthur, shaking hand to desk ring. We are eternal, we're together, and we always have been. Photograph of family, Arthur and Timothy and Arthur, and light too bright to see its source. In the morning, I will listen. In the morning, I'll be once again aboard my Zephyr. Full speed to Elko, full speed to you. Arthur Lewis Pullman. I read every word on the page, then read them again more slowly. By the third time through, I could hear my grandfather speaking behind me. His voice rolled slowly out of his chest to fill every corner of the room, deciding each word as he went, placing every one carefully on top of the last. I imagined him sitting at the desk, eyes fixed out the window, but he wasn't with me. He was out there, with the waves, and the mountains, and the burning orange light. We're together, he tells me, and we always have been. I caught my breath, and the gravity of what I held in my hands found me. My grandfather had written again. The diary or poem or whatever it was dated 5 years ago, April 27th, 2010. It was the day of the final photo, the day he disappeared, the first night of the last week of his life. I closed my eyes and clutched the pages closer, remembering the most important detail of it all. He hadn't left this out to be found. He tucked it into a specific book on a specific page regarding a specific story he once told his grandson about a boy who receives a sign from the divine and sets out after it. My grandfather wanted me to read this, but what did he want me to find? I read it again and heard my grandfather's voice louder. Desk, wooden, cold. He was sitting where I sat. Jagged line, burning orange light. He was staring out the window, looking at the same horizon that I was, cut along the tops of the mountains, the color of the sun exploding behind them. You and me and them, but who was he talking about? Chevys and Greyhounds and Zephyrs, forests of Elko, safety and Mecca, those were all proper nouns, places and things that looked almost fictional and, in a small way, familiar. We're together and we always have been, but who's together? Light too bright to see its source. My excitement slowly eroded into frustration. It was nonsense. It read like the poetic insanity of a man lost inside his own brain for too many years. The harder I tried to put the pieces together, the fewer pieces I found. I saw him again sitting next to me, the pen frozen in his hand, and this time I remembered the look that had likely been on his face as he wrote. Blank, warped with a permanent confusion, squinting as if staring into light too bright to see its source. My favorite story from the train has to do with a girl named Emily who I met between Elko, Nevada and Green River, Utah. And I watched her video back last night to make sure that I'm like doing a proper job of like describing her. And I think I'm even selling her short with just how beautiful and wonderful and weird of a human being she was. I sat down on this train. There was only one seat left for me, and it was next to this guy named Swifty, who looks exactly like you would imagine a guy named Swifty would probably look. He had a big beard and a lot of enthusiasm about marijuana. And across the aisle from us were these two kids, Emily and Christian, and they were on their way to a friend of theirs' funeral who just recently overdosed on heroin, which if you've spent much time in Middle America or kind of anywhere in America, that's not a particularly uncommon story. So we were driving, and they were amazing. They were existential and beautiful and fearless about the way that they were living their lives in a way that I think you kind of are clued into being when you are on your way to a friend of yours' funeral who's passed away at age 20. They were able to take all of these, like, I have a lot of concerns in my life that I kind of realized talking to them were externally applied onto them. They took all of the problems that I feel are really deep and important and serious in my life, like, why am I not more successful? And why doesn't this girl like me back? And they were able to take them and stretch them out and snap them back into nothing, because what the fuck does that matter to someone who is on their way to a friend of theirs' funeral who's just died at age 20? So I talked to them, and we were having an amazing conversation, and I was like, I have this bottle of whiskey, I feel like I have to share it with you. I have this bottle of champagne, I feel like we have to celebrate your friend's life. So we were sitting there, we were drinking, we took care of both of those bottles. We stopped in this small town in Nevada, and as we were sitting there drunk, me and Swifty and Christian, waiting for Emily to come back on, she walked back up the center aisle towards us with her eyes super, super wide and bug-eyed, and she leaned forward and said, literally the worst thing you can say to three drunk guys. She leans forward and she goes, be cool. Which is garbage, because no one who's ever been told to be cool has been cool in any kind of a way. And she peeled into her seat, and behind her was this guy, maybe 35 years old, with platinum blonde hair and a leather jacket and zero control of his bodily functions. I've been in a band long enough to know when someone is too drunk to be in public. This guy was way too drunk to be in public. And I kind of accosted her for it. I was like, what is he doing here? Why would you bring him into this sacred space that we've created? He's drunk. She was like, we're drunk. I was like, okay, checkmate, you're right. Sure enough, a couple of attendants from the train came rushing back, and they were like, no, this guy is not allowed on here. He's too drunk. He snuck past us. We have rules about this stuff. He's going to ruin things on this train. And Emily went into fierce, motherly lioness protection mode. She jumped out of her seat, and she was like, no, this is my brother. He has to stay here. That's a lie. Not her brother. She's like, if he screws anything up, I'll pay for it. I swear. You can't kick him off this train. It's going to, she said this specifically, she said, it's going to ruin both of our lives if you kick him off of this train. Which is a very extreme thing to say about a drunk guy that you've just met from a small town in Nevada. But she said it, and it worked, and the attendants from the train left us sitting there, and the guy fell asleep, and he was asleep for 2 hours, and when he woke up, he was throwing up, and we needed to get him like a pillowcase thing to kind of throw up into. And then he started telling us the story of why he was on the train, and what had put him there, and what he had told Emily that had made her to protect him so much. He had grown up in this small town in Nevada and never left it once in his life. He had been engaged to a woman for 3 years, and they were saving up to try to get married. They'd both been working fast food jobs to save up for a wedding, and she had broken off their engagement at 3 years because she decided that he wasn't cultured enough for her. And so he went to California, and he worked at a restaurant in California, and he dyed his hair blonde, and he bought a leather jacket, which is exactly what I would imagine you would do if you were going to California to get cultured, and the first thing you saw off of the plane was a magazine cover with a photo of 2016 era Justin Bieber. And he came back to this small town to try to win her back. And I'm sure you can probably guess, given the context of the story, just how well his winning her back mission had gone. They had been together for 3 years, they hadn't seen each other in 6 months, and she gave him 2 minutes on her doorstep before she slammed the door in his face and made him to go away. And he decided that was the impetus that he needed to pursue his lifelong dream of going to New York City to become a theater actor in New York City. And within an hour, he had gotten on the train, to go to New York City. And the only stop he had made along the way, liquor store. That's a really extreme decision to make about your life. The kind that I would imagine you could probably only make if you were like really heavy.